Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're going to be comparing the combat patrols to the boarding patrols, seeing do they go well together, is one a better deal than the other, or what are the main differences if you choose one option over the other. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. Alright, so we've got 4 boarding patrols to look at today. So we're going to start with our Adeptus Mechanicus and compare that to the combat patrol. And then we're also going to do Chaos Demons, the Khorne box sets, Genestealer Cults, and then Death Guard as well. The main things we're looking for is comparison in the price versus what you get, comparison in the actual models, and then do they go well together if you had one of each. So right off the bat, we have the Combat Patrol and Boarding Patrol Adeptus Mechanicus, and we'll see there's a lot of similarities between this set, at least at the heart of it. So right off the bat, you get 10 Skitarii Vanguard or Rangers. It's an alternative kit. You can build either. And both box sets come with those 10 models. So that's the same. And then we also see 3 of the Kataphron Breachers or Destroyers as well in both sets. So again, same thing. And then we start to get to the differences. So the Boarding Patrol has the Tech Priest Dominus, which was very common before because for a long time he was in the Start Collecting box, as where the Combat Patrol has the Tech Priest Engine Seer. So we have the character, we have the 10 Skitarii, and the 3 Breachers in both box sets. So after the characters, we get into the real differences between the box sets. The Boarding Patrol actually has 5 of the Sicarian Infiltrators or Rust Stalkers, which are some nice models that are pretty much going to be in any army, whether it's for Boarding Patrol or Warhammer 40,000. And that actually rounds out the Boarding Patrol box, which comes in at $140, as opposed to the Combat Patrol box, which doesn't have the additional unit and costs $20 more, but does contain 1 Onager Dune Crawler. So the real trade-off is basically, do you want to pay $20 extra and get the Dune Crawler and this character, or pay $20 less, not get the Dune Crawler, and then get 5 Sicarians instead, and then not get the Tech Priest Engine Seer, and get the Tech Priest Dominus instead. So in my opinion, value-wise, they're about the same. So there is a little bit of a trade-off. Part of it is in dollars, part of it is in models. But the truth is, you have to kind of decide for yourself. And one nice thing about the Boarding Patrol boxes, everything from the Boarding Patrol box can be played in 40k. One hindrance of the Combat Patrol box is, obviously, you're never going to be able to use the Dune Crawler inside of Boarding Actions games. I think the biggest drawback is that lately all of Games Workshop's box sets have had lots of the Kataphron Destroyers in them, and they haven't really been popular for a long time, so it more just feels like GW is kind of dumping them on the community rather than putting them in the box because people want them. Now that being said, we recently saw some changes in points and everything, and actually the Kataphrons went down quite a bit, so they're much more viable of a unit than they were previously. So overall, when we compare these two, I would say they're relatively even for what you get in the set, for the value, composition, all that good stuff. They are obviously both specialized specifically for either boarding actions or regular 40k, but the nice thing about the Boarding Patrol is that it's compatible with both. So if you already have the Combat Patrol and you're thinking about picking up the Boarding Patrol, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. It's a nice place to expand. It's going to give you some of the same units that you want more of. It's also going to give you some different units that you would like to have as well. All in all, I would have to say that both these box sets are nice and a good value. So moving right along to the Genestealer Cults box set, take a quick look at those as well. So the Genestealer Cults Combat Patrol is $160, the Boarding Patrol is $125. So you do have 5 of the Acolytes in this set, and then also 10 in this set. So you're going to have the same 5 and then 5 more. And then we also see 5 of the Aberrants in both box sets. And that is actually the end of the similarities. So the Boarding Patrol box also has the Abominant character, as well as the Kelermorph, and then the addition of 5 Acolyte hybrids. And it is also $35 cheaper. Now here on the Combat Patrol, we see that it has the addition of 20 Neophytes, as well as the Magus, and then also the Rock Grinder. So quite a bit of difference right here. The real question is, would you rather have 5 extra Acolytes or 20 Neophytes? Would you rather have the Kelermorph and the Abominant? Or would you rather have the Magus and then also the Rock Grinder as well? And again, because there are a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, it's a little more difficult to compare, but the $35 difference is also a factor as well. I think overall though, both of these box sets are nice. They're both good savings. And realistically, if you already have the Combat Patrol, the Boarding Patrol complements it pretty well. But you are going to end up with quite a few Acolytes, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think overall, if you did pick up these two box sets, you're on track for a pretty nice starting army. And again, I do like that the characters are not redundant, because you could always figure out a way to squeeze 5 extra Acolytes into your army or some extra Neophytes or something like that. But more often than not, you're not looking for multiples of the same character. So I do have to give Games Workshop a high five on that one. Overall, both these box sets are nice, and I think they complement each other well. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch, and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now, back to the video. Alright, and then on to the Chaos Demons, which is really Chaos Khorne Daemons. So right off the bat, these sets are very, very similar. If we take out the 10 Flesh Hounds, those are in both box sets. We have 10 Bloodletters in the Boarding Patrol box. We have 20 in the Combat Patrol box, so we actually have 10 extras. And then in the Boarding Patrol box, the only other thing we have is Karanak, which is the special Flesh Hounds 3-headed character. And instead of Karanak in the Combat Patrol, we have the Bloodmaster as the character. And then we also have the addition of 3 Blood Crushers, which are basically just the Khorne Demons riding Juggernauts. The Chaos Demon Boarding Patrol is $130, and the Combat Patrol is $160. So basically, if you look at these box sets, they're both pretty good deal and savings overall, but the Combat Patrol for Chaos Demons is just absolutely amazing. The amount of savings that you get inside the box set and units that you get makes it a clear winner. So essentially, if you were deciding between spending $130 on the Boarding Patrol or $160 on the Combat Patrol, you're not going to get Karanak, which is like $40 roughly on his own, but you get a different character instead who's still really good. You also get 10 Bloodletters, and then you get 3 of the Blood Crushers, and you get all that for $30 instead. So for me, the obvious decision is to just buy the Combat Patrol, and then if you really want Karanak, just buy him separately. Because realistically, you're going to end up with so many more units. The extra 10 Bloodletters you're definitely going to want, and then also the Blood Crushers are very good, and they're also very expensive in dollar terms. So if you can basically get those tossed in for free, that's definitely the way to do it. So this is the first of the Boarding Patrol boxes that I think is just a straight pass, because the Combat Patrol is just so much better. I think you're much better off paying the $30, getting a different character, 10 extra Bloodletters, and then 3 Blood Crushers as well. And it's very hard to justify buying the Boarding Patrol just because you want Karanak when you can just pick them up on the side separately. So for me on this one, the Chaos Demons Boarding Patrol is a definite pass. I would just much rather have 2 of the Combat Patrol. You get substantially more units, it's much better savings, and overall there's really no drawback to it. Alright, and then finally we have the Death Guard. So this one, the Combat Patrol is still $160 obviously, but the Boarding Patrol is only $115. So this is the biggest difference in price between the two. $45 extra for the Combat Patrol over the Boarding Patrol. And the similarities are very minimal as well. In the Combat Patrol, you're going to get 7 Plague Marines. You're going to get the 7 same Plague Marines in the Boarding Patrol, but you're also going to get 3 sort of like unique Plague Marines. Now, they're not a good deal, but they are individual sculpts, so I could see the appeal of them. And also, it does round out your force to having 10 Plague Marines, which is definitely useful. And that's basically where the similarities end. So going from there, the Boarding Patrol also has 3 Deathshroud Terminators, which are very good. And then it also has the Lord of Virulence, who is a nice character as well. And then if we just move over to the Combat Patrol, you have the addition of 30 Poxwalkers, which is more than you probably ever want for an army. And then character-wise, you get the Biologist Putrefier and also Lord Typhus. So there's not a ton of similarities, so it's much more difficult to compare the two because they don't really offer like the same kind of force or anything like that. This is much more of an elite force, as where this one is much more of a kind of horde army. And the price difference is quite a bit as well. $45 extra for the combat patrol over the boarding patrol. And honestly, the combat patrol is not really that popular because there's 30 poxwalkers in it. It's just a little too much of all the same. So the boarding patrol is nice because it doesn't have any of that redundancy with poxwalkers. It does include some more plague marines, which is always something nice, especially after they got their free points upgrades, where they could essentially take all of the various equipment for no additional points, which is basically just like the entire squad costing substantially less or being exponentially better equipped. Typhus is very good, and he does buff the poxwalkers, so there's some nice synergy there. The Deathshroud Terminators are extremely good as well. So in my opinion, rather than looking at these two sets as adversaries and thinking about them against each other, which would you rather have? I think it more comes to what do you already have in your army. If you were starting with nothing, either one of these box sets is a nice start. But if you already have a bunch of poxwalkers or you already have a bunch of plague marines, maybe one seems more appealing than the other. Because in my opinion, you're going to want at least a few squads of plague marines, and you're going to want at least a few poxwalkers as well. So both of them make a nice combination. But if you already have a bunch of poxwalkers, I don't think you really want the combat patrol. I think the real win is when you take these two and you put them together. Because you basically end up with 17 plague marines, 30 poxwalkers, Typhus, the Biologist Putrefier, 3 Deathshroud Terminators, and the Lord of Virulence. So there's very little redundancy between the two box sets, and the only redundancy with the Plague Marines is something that you actually want anyway. All of the units in both box sets are nice and fit into the army well, and honestly I think the best way to go would be to pick up one of each if you were looking to build out an army for Death Guard. But I think for a lot of people, the boarding patrol is probably going to jump out as a better option than the combat patrol. But alternatively, if you were looking to play boarding actions, one nice thing about this combat patrol is all of these units are potentially viable in boarding actions, which is pretty awesome, as where most of the other combat patrol boxes have some kind of vehicle or other unit that you would not be able to take in boarding actions. So overall, both box sets are nice, good value, and I think the real way to go here is to put them together and have them synergize with each other, because it's basically going to give you a little bit of everything you need to get your army rolling. And then where you go after that, whether you add in some more vehicles, whether you add in Mortarion or something different, is entirely up to you. So I think when it's all said and done, most of the boarding patrol boxes are pretty nice. Overall, they complement the combat patrols nicely, and I think Games Workshop has went out of their way to do that intentionally. I don't think any of them are a blatant no, except for the Chaos Demons box, because it's just better to buy the combat patrol, get the extra units, and then if you just absolutely have to have Karanak, you can buy him separately. So that's our little breakdown comparison between the 4 boarding patrols coming out this week on pre-order and their combat patrol equivalents. I think the AdMech set is nice, and the 2 boxes complement each other as well. Same with the Genestealer Cults also, and then of course the Death Guard. I think the Chaos Demons boarding patrol is a definite pass, and actually relative to all of the combat patrols, if we do the breakdown, the Genestealer Cults combat patrol and the Chaos Demons combat patrol are 2 of the best savings offered by Games Workshop at almost 45% off. So anytime you have the option to buy one of those combat patrols or you're interested in the units inside, it's a no-brainer because you get so much of that box for free over buying individual units at MSRP. So let me know what you think down below. Which of these boarding patrols are you most excited for? Did I change your mind on picking up one of the boarding patrols and now you're just going to get the combat patrol instead? Always like to hear your guys' opinions. Also, there's some nice battle boxes that came out for some of these various armies as well. So if you did pick up one of those Christmas boxes or something different in the past, maybe that's not going to apply to you. So you should always use your best judgment. If you do have some other questions or you want my opinion on something, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll be glad to answer that as well, to the best of my ability. Special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. If you're interested in any of these boarding patrols coming out this weekend, make sure to check them out to save 15%, link in the description, and tell them that Warhammer Man sent you. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios with our Boarding Patrol, Combat Patrol comparison and synergies. And I'm out of here.